Day 1. This tank looks perfect. Day 9. Half the fish are dead. Nothing was added. Nothing was changed. The water did this on its own. And almost nobody explains why before it happens to you. Here is a statistic that should be printed on every starter kit box, and never is. The majority of fish that die in a beginner's first aquarium die within the first 30 days. Not from bad luck, not from a bad batch of fish, from something called new tank syndrome. A predictable, well-understood biological process that almost every beginner walks into blind because the store that sold them the tank had every reason to sell them fish on day 1 and zero reason to explain why that's the single worst thing they could do. I'm going to walk you through this exact 30-day window, day by day, stage by stage. What's actually happening invisibly in that water when the danger peaks, and the specific decisions in week 1 that determine whether your tank is thriving by day 30 or you're standing at the return counter with a bag of dead fish. I'm saving the single most common mistake, the one that quietly kills more beginner tanks than any other, for the middle of this video. Because once you see it, you'll never make it again. Subscribe right now if you want the information that should have come free with your tank. Let's start at day 1. One sentence before the timeline. A brand new aquarium has zero biological infrastructure. No beneficial bacteria, no stable microorganism population. Nothing capable of processing fish waste. It is, biologically speaking, a sterile box of treated water. And the entire 30-day journey we're about to walk through is the story of that sterile box becoming a living, self-regulating ecosystem. Or not, depending on what you do in the first 2 weeks. Day 1. The setup. Here's what should happen on day 1, and what most beginners get right without realizing how much rides on it. Pick a stable location, away from direct sunlight, which accelerates algae, and away from heating or cooling vents, which create temperature swings. Add your substrate. Fill with dechlorinated water. This step is non-negotiable. Chlorine and chloramine in tap water don't just harm fish directly. They kill the beneficial bacteria you are about to spend 2 weeks trying to grow. Skipping the water conditioner on day 1 sabotages everything that follows. Run your filter and heater. Let the system stabilize for 24 to 48 hours before anything else happens. On day 1, the water in this tank looks completely clean. It is. It's also completely sterile. There is no biological safety net yet. That matters enormously for what comes next. Day 2 to 4. The temptation. By day 3, the tank looks ready. It's clear, it's running, it's been sitting empty for a few days, and it's getting boring to look at. This is exactly the moment most beginners give in and go buy fish. Here's the problem. The bacteria that process fish waste, Nitrosomonas and Nitrospira, haven't started growing yet because there's been no ammonia source to feed them. An empty, clean-looking tank on day 3 has the exact same biological capacity as a tank on day 0. None. Adding fish now doesn't speed up the process. It starts a race between fish waste production and bacterial colonization. A race the bacteria almost always lose in the first 2 weeks. If you can wait, this is the moment to introduce an ammonia source without livestock. A few flakes of fish food left to decay or a small dose of pure ammonia gives the bacteria something to start consuming immediately, without risking a single fish. Day 5 to 9. The silent build-up. This is the window where the tank from the hook, day 1 perfect, day 9 crashing, actually happens. If fish were added early, this is when ammonia begins accumulating faster than the still tiny bacterial population can consume it. The water can remain visually clear the entire time. There is no color change until ammonia reaches levels that are already dangerous. By day 7 or 8, in a tank stocked with fish from day 1, ammonia readings commonly climb into the 1 to 2 parts per million range, a level that damages gill tissue and suppresses immune function in most tropical species. This is when fish start dying. Not because anything visibly went wrong, because the invisible chemistry finally caught up to what had been building silently for a week. If you waited and used a fishless ammonia source instead, this is the window where you'd start seeing your first test kit readings show ammonia beginning to drop. That drop is the single most encouraging sign in the entire 30-day process. It means Nitrosomonas bacteria have started establishing and are doing their job. Day 10 to 14, the trap almost everyone falls into. Here is the single most common mistake that quietly wrecks more beginner tanks than any other. And it happens almost exactly here, around day 10 to 14. Ammonia has been climbing. Then, finally, it starts to fall. The beginner tests their water, sees that encouraging drop, and assumes the danger has passed. They add fish immediately. Or, if fish were already in the tank, they relax. Stop testing, stop watching closely, assume the worst is over. It is not over. It has just changed shape. As Nitrosomonas bacteria consume that falling ammonia, they produce nitrite as a byproduct. And nitrite, which just began accumulating right as the beginner's guard went down, is, per unit, often more toxic than ammonia in many species. It doesn't damage gill tissue directly. It binds to hemoglobin and prevents fish blood from carrying oxygen at all. A fish in elevated nitrite is suffocating in perfectly oxygenated water. This is why so many beginner tank disasters happen in the second week rather than the first. The falling ammonia reading creates false confidence at the exact moment a new, less visible threat is beginning. The fix? Don't stop testing when ammonia starts dropping. Test both ammonia and nitrite through the entire 30-day window. A safe tank requires both readings at 0, not one improving while the other rises unnoticed. Days 1 through 14 covered. The setup, the temptation, the silent build-up, and the trap almost everyone falls into. Subscribe right now if you haven't. The next video is the complete beginner fish selection guide, built around exactly which species can handle this 30-day window and which ones can't. Here's where the story turns. Because everything up to day 14 has been about survival, avoiding the mistakes that kill fish in the danger window. Days 15 through 30 are about something different. Watching a sterile box of water actually become the stable, self-regulating ecosystem it's supposed to be. And there's one specific milestone in this second half of the month that tells you with total certainty whether your tank has crossed the finish line. A milestone most beginners have never heard of and don't know to look for. Day 15 to 21, Nitrite's turn. This is typically the longest and most anxiety-inducing stretch of the entire 30 days. Nitrite, having risen through the second week, now needs Nitrospira bacteria to establish and begin consuming it, the second stage of the nitrogen cycle. This colonization takes longer than the first stage typically did because Nitrospira reproduce more slowly than Nitrosomonas. Nitrite readings can stay elevated for a week or more during this phase, even as ammonia has already reached 0. This is normal. It is also the point where beginners most often panic and make a rash decision. A large emergency water change, a dose of medication just in case, an aggressive filter cleaning, any of which can disrupt the bacterial colonization that's actually in progress and extend this phase rather than shorten it. The correct move during this window? Small, frequent water changes. 15 to 20% every couple of days rather than one large change, to dilute nitrite without disrupting the bacteria doing the work. And salt, plain aquarium salt, 1 tablespoon per 5 gallons, which competes with nitrite at the gill surface and buys fish real protection while the colony finishes establishing. Day 22 to 28, the turning point. By this stage, in a tank that's been managed correctly, both ammonia and nitrite readings begin holding steady at 0. Nitrate, the far less toxic end product, starts appearing on tests for the first time. This is the visible sign that both bacterial colonies have established and are working together. Ammonia converted to nitrite, nitrite converted to nitrate, as fast as the fish are producing waste. Fish behavior changes noticeably here too. Colors brighten, activity increases, feeding response sharpens. This isn't coincidence. It's the direct result of fish no longer living under the low-grade chronic stress of fluctuating ammonia and nitrite. Day 29 to 30, the test that actually proves it. Here is the milestone almost no beginner knows to check for. The one that tells you with certainty that your cycle is genuinely complete rather than just looking complete. Dose a small, measured amount of ammonia into the tank, roughly 2 parts per million, and test again 24 hours later. If your bacterial colonies are truly established, that ammonia will read at or near 0 within 24 hours. Nitrite will remain at 0 throughout. This is called an ammonia processing test, and it's the single most reliable way to confirm your tank can actually handle a real bioload increase. Not just that today's readings happen to look clean. A tank that passes this test on day 30 is not probably fine. It has biologically demonstrated that its bacterial capacity matches or exceeds its current waste production. That is the actual definition of a cycled tank, not a calendar date, a demonstrated capability. Most beginners never run this test. They just stop testing once the numbers look good for a week and hope. Now you don't have to hope. 30 days. A sterile box of treated water on day 1. A living, self-regulating biological system by day 30, if the process was respected instead of rushed. Every fish death in this window that felt random, that felt like bad luck or a bad batch, or something the beginner did wrong, almost all of it traces back to one of 3 moments in this timeline. Fish added too early, before any bacterial infrastructure existed. The false confidence when ammonia dropped and nitrite quietly rose unnoticed. Or panic-driven overcorrection during the longest, most uncertain week of the process. None of those are failures of the fish keeper's care or intention. They are failures of information that should have come with the tank and didn't. You now have the timeline. You know what's happening in that water on every single day that matters. And you know the one test that proves, rather than hopes, that your tank is actually ready. Here's your 30-day checklist starting today. Day 1. Setup, dechlorinate, run filter and heater for 48 hours before anything else. Day 3. Add an ammonia source, fishless if at all possible. Days 5 through 21. Test ammonia and nitrite every 2 to 3 days, not just when something looks wrong, every single time. Day 30. Run the ammonia processing test. Dose. Wait 24 hours. Retest. 0 and 0 is your green light. If you're past day 1 already and fish are already in the tank, none of this is wasted. Start testing today, right now, and use everything in this video to read exactly where you are in the timeline and what to do next. The complete beginner fish selection guide, built entirely around which species can actually survive this exact 30-day window, is linked in the description. Subscribe right now if you haven't, because that video is the direct next step after this one. And drop a comment below. Which day of your first 30 did things go wrong for you? Because I have a feeling this comment section is about to map out exactly where most beginner tanks actually fail, and it's going to help everyone who reads it.